My mom tries to force me to sell my apartment to pay for my half-sister's college tuition. She got the support of all my relatives and friends, making me look like a villain. So I sued her, and the verdict was unexpected. My name is Kate, and I grew up in a small house that always smelled of fresh bread. Dad inherited the family bakery from his parents, and I loved helping him knead dough after school. Mom was different. She was a realtor, always dressed in sharp suits and heels, bringing in more money than Dad ever did. "Kate, come set the table," Mom called one evening. I was 12, gangly and awkward, more interested in reading than anything else. "Coming," I shouted back, dog-earing my page. As I laid out the plates, I heard them start up again. "Another slow month, John." Mom's voice dripped with disdain. "When are you going to get your act together?" Dad's reply was soft. "Sarah, please, not in front of Kate." "Oh, who cares?" Mom snapped. "She should know what a loser her father is." I gripped the edge of the table, willing myself not to cry. This was a common scene in our house, Mom belittling Dad, Dad trying to keep the peace. I knew Mom was angry about more than just money. She felt trapped in a life she never wanted. "Kate," Mom barked, "where's my wine?" I scrambled to pour her a glass, my hands shaking. As I set it down, some splashed onto the tablecloth. Mom's eyes flashed. "You useless girl. Can't you do anything right?" Dad intervened. "It's just a little wine, Sarah. No harm done." Mom glared at him. "You're too soft on her. No wonder she's growing up to be just as pathetic as you." I fled to my room, burying my face in my pillow. I loved Dad fiercely, but I couldn't understand why he put up with Mom's treatment. As for me, I'd learned to make myself scarce, to be as quiet and unobtrusive as possible. The next morning, I woke to find the house eerily silent. No smell of baking bread, no click of Mom's heels. I crept downstairs to find Dad sitting at the kitchen table, his face ashen. "Where's Mom?" I asked, though I already knew the answer deep in my gut. Dad wordlessly handed me a note. In Mom's elegant handwriting, it read, "John, I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving with Richard. He can give me the life I deserve, not this small-town nonsense. Kate, don't bother trying to find me. You're just dead weight I don't need. John, you're a loser, and you've turned our daughter into one too. Goodbye and good riddance." I stared at the paper, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Mom was gone. She'd abandoned us, calling Dad a loser and me useless in her parting shot. The next few months were a blur of legal proceedings and emotional turmoil. Dad filed for divorce and petitioned to have Mom's parental rights terminated. I remember sitting in the cold courthouse, my sweaty hand clutching Dad's as we waited for Mom to show up. She never did. I zoned out as the adults talked, catching snippets like abandonment and unfit parent. When it was over, Dad squeezed my hand. "It's done, Katie," he said softly. "The divorce is final and your mother's parental rights have been terminated. It's just you and me now." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. Life got harder after that. Dad threw himself into work, spending long hours at the bakery. Despite being only 12, I took on most of the housework. I'd come home from school, do my homework, then start on dinner and laundry. 3 years passed in this routine. Then, just after my 15th birthday, everything changed again. Dad came home one day, his face a mix of shock and grief. "Uncle Pete died," he said, collapsing into a kitchen chair. "Oh, Dad, I'm so sorry," I said, hugging him tight. He hugged me back, then pulled away, his eyes wide. "Katie, you won't believe this. He left me everything, almost $300,000. I'm his only living relative. I don't know what to do with it all, but Dad figured it out quick. He invested a chunk of the money into the bakery, upgrading equipment and expanding the menu. Within months, our little bakery was the talk of the town. Dad hired more staff, extended the hours, and before we knew it, he was opening a second location across town. By the time I turned 16, Dad owned 3 thriving bakeries. Our financial worries were a thing of the past. I quit my after-school job and focused on my studies. We even took our first real vacation, a 2-week trip to Europe. As the years went by, Mom became a distant memory. Dad dated occasionally, but never seemed interested in remarrying. I didn't push it. We were happy as we were. High school graduation came and went in a blur of cap tossing and teary hugs. I'd worked my butt off, and it paid off. I was headed to State University to study finance. The morning I was set to leave, Dad handed me a small box. "What's this?" I asked, opening it to find a key. Dad grinned. "Your graduation gift. It's an apartment near campus. No more worrying about dorm life or rent." I stared at him speechless. "Dad, I can't. This is too much." He waved off my protests. "You earned it, Katie. Now go make me proud." College flew by. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make the most of the opportunity Dad had given me. When I wasn't in class or studying, I was interning at local financial firms. By the time I graduated, I had a job lined up as a junior financial analyst. My first day at work, I stood in front of my apartment mirror straightening my laser. "You've got this, Kate," I told my reflection. "Make Dad proud." The job was challenging, but I loved it. Every bonus or raise I got, I invested rather than spent. Dad's voice echoed in my head. "Money makes money, Katie. Be smart with it." Years passed. By the time I hit 32, those smart investments had paid off. I owned 2 more apartments in addition to the one I lived in, all bringing in steady rental income. Life was good. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Katie," Dad's voice sounded strained. "Can you come over? I need to talk to you about something." I found him sitting at his kitchen table looking older than I'd ever seen him. "What is it, Dad?" I asked, fear clenching my stomach. He took a deep breath. "It's cancer, honey. Stage 4 pancreatic." The world tilted on its axis. "No," I whispered. There must be some mistake, but there wasn't. The next year was a hellish roller coaster of treatments, remissions, and relapses. I spent every free moment at the hospital or at Dad's house making his favorite cheese soup even when he was too nauseous to eat it. One crisp bottom day, I arrived at Dad's house to find him sitting in his favorite armchair, a serious look on his face. "We need to talk, Katie," he said, patting the seat next to him. "The doctors gave me 6 months tops." "No," I said, shaking my head furiously. "They're wrong? We'll get a second opinion." "Will, Katie," he interrupted gently. "It's okay. I've made my peace with it. I'm selling the bakeries. Everything's going to you. You'll be set for life." I pulled back, wiping my eyes. "I don't want your money, Dad. I want you." He smiled sadly. "I know, sweetheart, but this is how I can take care of you even when I'm gone." The next 7 months were precious and painful. We talked more than we ever had about everything and nothing. I memorized every line on his face, the sound of his laugh, the smell of sugar and flour that clung to him even now. And then on a quiet Wednesday morning, he was gone. The funeral was a blur. Afterward, I sat in Dad's empty house clutching his favorite apron. The lawyer had already been by with the paperwork. True to his word, Dad had left me everything. I used the money from the bakeries to buy 2 more apartments. It felt right, somehow, building something lasting just like Dad had done. A year after Dad's passing, I was just starting to find my footing again. Work kept me busy, and managing my rental properties gave me a sense of purpose. I'd settled into a new normal, or so I thought. Then came the call that turned everything upside down. "Kate, it's your mother. I'm back in town. I'd like to see you if you're willing." My mind raced. Part of me wanted to hang up to protect myself from the woman who'd abandoned me, but another part, the part that still held on to the little girl I once was, couldn't help but be curious. "Okay." I heard myself say, "Let's meet at Rosie's Cafe tomorrow at noon." The next day, I arrived at the cafe early, my stomach in knots. As the clock struck 12, I saw her walk in. She looked older, of course, but still elegant, but she wasn't alone. A young girl, maybe 17, trailed behind her. Mom spotted me and hurried over. "Kate, darling, you look wonderful. And this is Lily, your sister?" I felt like I'd been slapped. "My what?" We sat down, and Mom launched into her story. How her lover Richard had left her shortly after Lily was born, how they'd struggled to make ends meet, how she decided to come back to her hometown to start over. "I heard you have a rental property," she continued, her voice hopeful. I was wondering if maybe she trailed off, but her meaning was clear. I looked at Lily, who was staring at her hands, clearly uncomfortable. I thought about Dad, about how he'd always taught me to be kind even when it was hard. I thought about the scared little girl I used to be, wishing for her mom to come back. Okay. I heard myself say, I have a unit that's just become available. You can stay there. Mom's face lit up. Okay. Thank you. We'll pay rent, of course. I held up a hand. No rent, just utilities for now. As we hammered out the details, I watched Lily. She looked so young, so out of place. I remembered being her age, feeling lost and alone after Mom left. So Lily, I said, trying to sound friendly, you're what? A junior in high school? She nodded, meeting my eyes for the first time. Yeah. It's weird. Starting at a new school for senior year, I felt a pang of sympathy, I bet. Listen, if you need help with anything, school stuff or just someone to talk to, I'm here. Okay? Lily gave me a small smile. Thanks, Ed. That means a lot. As we left the cafe, Mom hugged me again. You're an angel, Kate. I know I have a lot to make up for, but I hope we can start fresh. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. That night, as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to get a lot more complicated, but for better or worse, my mother was back in my life, and I had a sister. Only time would tell what that would mean for all of us. The months following Mom and Lily's return were strange. Mom quickly found work as a realtor, slipping back into her old life as if she'd never left. Lily enrolled in the local high school for her senior year. I kept my distance, unsure how to navigate this new family dynamic. Occasionally, Mom would call or stop by. Kate, darling, thank you again for the apartment. She'd gush, her smile wide and seemingly sincere. You've been such a blessing. I'd nod, uncomfortable with her effusive gratitude. It's fine, Mom. I'm glad I could help. Lily and I developed a cautious friendship. I'd help her with math homework or listen to her college plans. It was nice in a way having a sister, but there was always a barrier, the weight of the years we'd missed. Then came Lily's graduation. I attended the ceremony, watching from the back as she accepted her diploma. Mom beamed with pride, and for a moment I allowed myself to imagine what life might have been like if she'd never left. The very next day, Mom showed up at my door unannounced. Her face was flushed, eyes blazing. We need to talk, she snapped, pushing past me into the living room. I followed, confused. What's going on? She whirled on me. Don't play dumb. I know about the apartments, Kate. All 4 of them. My stomach dropped. How had she found out? What about them? I asked, keeping my voice level. You've been holding out on us, she shrieked, living the high life while Lily and I scraped by. I felt my temper rising. Excuse me. You're living rent-free in one of those apartments. That's not enough, she spat. Half of those properties should be mine. I'm your mother. I couldn't help it. I laughed. It was so absurd. You can't be serious. You lost any claim to my property when you abandoned us, remember? No parental rights, no child support. She changed tack then, her voice suddenly pleading, Kate, sweet. Think about Lily. She needs money for college. If you just sold one apartment, absolutely not. I cut her off. Lily's education is not my responsibility. How can you be so selfish? Mom wailed. After everything I've done for you. That was the last straw. Everything you've done for me? I repeated incredulously. You mean abandoning me, calling me useless in your goodbye note? Or wait, do you mean living rent-free in my apartment for months? Mom recoiled as if I'd slapped her. For a moment, she just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then, without another word, she turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there shaking with anger and hurt. How dare she? After everything, how dare she try to guilt me like this? I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. I'd known deep down that letting Mom back into my life was a risk, but I'd hoped. Well, I wasn't sure what I'd hoped for. As the adrenaline faded, I felt a deep aching sadness. This woman who should have been my protector, my support, was nothing but a stranger who wanted to use me. And Lily, God. What was I going to do about Lily? 2 weeks after Mom's blow-up, I was grabbing coffee at my usual spot when I noticed the barista giving me odd looks. As I waited for my order, I overheard a snippet of conversation from a nearby table. Can you believe it? Charging her own mother rent when she's got all those apartments? I froze. Surely, they couldn't be talking about me, but they were. Over the next few days, I caught more whispers, more sidelong glances. It seemed Mom had been busy spreading her twisted version of events to anyone who would listen. Then came the Facebook post. I saw it during my lunch break and nearly choked on my sandwich. My daughter, Kate, has 4 apartments she rents out, making a fortune, but refuses to help pay for her sister's college education. She's forcing me to pay exorbitant rent when I can barely make ends meet. I'm heartbroken that my own child could be so greedy and selfish. The comments poured in, each one a knife to my heart. How could she do that to her own mother? What a horrible person. I always knew there was something off about her. Friends, relatives, even old classmates I hadn't spoken to in years, all of them jumping on the bandwagon, shaming me for my supposed greed. Not one of them seemed to remember or care that this woman had abandoned me as a child. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, my boss called me into his office. "Kate," he said, his face grave. "We need to talk about this situation with your mother. It's starting to affect the company's reputation." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Sir, I can explain." He held up a hand. "I'm not asking for details, but I need you to resolve this quietly and quickly. We can't have this kind of drama associated with our firm." "Understand?" I nodded numbly, not trusting myself to speak. Back at my desk, I found an email notification about unpaid utilities for Mom's apartment. Great. Just great. With shaking hands, I dialed Mom's number. "What do you want?" She snapped by way of greeting. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, there are unpaid utility bills for your apartment. We agreed you'd cover those. Remember?" She scoffed. "Oh, please. You're rolling in money from all those apartments. You can afford to pay a few bills." "That's not the point," I said, my patience wearing thin. "We had an agreement." "An agreement?" She interrupted. "Like the agreement that you'd help your family? Fat lot of good that did us." I sat there, phone in hand, feeling like the world was crumbling around me. How had I let things get this far? I'd tried to do the right thing, to be kind and generous, and this was how I was repaid. With a heavy heart, I made an appointment with a lawyer. "Miss Stevens," the lawyer said, reviewing my case, "you have every right to evict your mother. She has no lease, pays no rent, and you've given her ample notice about the utility bills." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and dread. "What do I need to do?" He handed me a document. "This is an official eviction notice. Serve it to her, and if she doesn't comply, we can take legal action." Armed with the paper, I drove to Mom's apartment, my apartment really. My hands shook as I knocked on the door. Mom answered, her face twisting with displeasure when she saw me. "Oh, it's you. Have you finally come to your senses about selling an apartment for Lily's college? Lily's picked out her school. Tuition's due next month." My shock turned to anger. "Are you serious right now? After everything you've done, you're still making demands?" "Don't be so dramatic," Mom scoffed. "It's the least you can do for family." That was it, the last straw. I thrust the eviction notice at her. "Here. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." Mom stared at the paper, her face going pale. Then, without warning, she exploded. "You ungrateful little brute," she screamed, her voice echoing through the apartment. "After everything I've done for you." I stood my ground. "Everything you've done, you mean abandoning me, spreading lies about me?" She lunged forward, her hand raised. I flinched, but the blow never came. Instead, she grabbed the front of my shirt, spitting insults in my face. "You're nothing. You hear me? Nothing but a selfish heartless." I managed to break free, fumbling for my phone. "That's it. I'm calling the police." Mom's eyes widened, but she didn't back down. She continued her tirade, her words becoming more vicious with each passing second. When the police arrived, I was shaking, tears streaming down my face. I showed them the eviction notice, explained the situation as calmly as I could. "Ma'am," one officer said to Mom, "I suggest you calm down and discuss this civilly with your daughter. Mom sneered, civilly with her. She's trying to throw us out on the street. The other officer turned to me. Miss Stevens, legally, this is a civil matter. We can't forcibly remove her without a court order. I'd suggest trying to work this out between yourselves or taking it to court if necessary. I nodded, feeling defeated as the police left. Mom's triumphant smirk made my blood boil. You won't do it, she taunted. You don't have the guts to take your own mother to court. I stared at her. This woman who had given birth to me, but had never truly been a mother. In that moment, I felt something inside me harden. Watch me, I said, my voice low and steady. Before she could respond, I turned and walked away. As I reached my car, I heard the slam of the apartment door behind me. As I drove home, I thought about what lay ahead: a court battle, more drama, more pain, but also maybe a chance to finally break free from the toxic hold my mother had over me. The day of the court hearing arrived, and I felt like I might throw up. As I walked into the courtroom, I saw Mom and Lily sitting on the opposite side. Mom's eyes were red and puffy, while Lily looked like she wanted to disappear. The proceedings began, and Mom put on quite a show. She wept dramatically, her voice breaking as she addressed the judge. Your Honor, she sobbed. My daughter has become so cold-hearted. She's trying to throw her own mother and sister out on the streets after everything I've done for her. I clenched my fists, willing myself to stay calm. Then my lawyer stood up, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Your Honor, he began, his voice steady and confident. I'd like to present some evidence that paints a very different picture of the situation. He proceeded to lay out the facts: Mom's abandonment when I was 12, the termination of her parental rights, her failure to pay any child support. He showed the judge the documentation of the rent-free arrangement and the unpaid utility bills, but he wasn't done. Furthermore, Your Honor, we have evidence that Mrs. Stevens is not in fact in the dire financial straits she claims. Mom's head snapped up, her eyes wide. My lawyer continued, Mrs. Stevens owns an apartment in another city left to her by her former partner. She currently rents out this property for a substantial monthly income. The courtroom fell silent. The judge turned to Mom, his expression stern. Is this true, Mrs. Stevens? Mom's face had gone pale. She opened and closed her mouth a few times before finally whispering, Yes, Your Honor. The judge's voice was cold as he delivered his verdict. This court grants the eviction. Furthermore, Mrs. Stevens will pay back rent for the months she occupied the apartment rent-free. Mrs. Stevens, your actions are nothing short of unconscionable. This case is closed. The gavel came down with a bang that seemed to echo through my entire body. It was over. We'd won. As we left the courtroom, I caught sight of Lily. She looked lost, confused, and my heart ached for her. This wasn't her fault. I walked over to her, ignoring Mom's glare. Lily, I said softly, I'm sorry it came to this. If you need help, real help, you can still reach out to me. Okay? She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, Kate. I didn't know. I gave her a sad smile and walked away, feeling like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. In the weeks that followed, Mom and Lily moved out of my apartment. I heard through the grapevine that they'd gone to live in Mom's other property. I didn't try to contact them, and they didn't reach out to me.